Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Amherst Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut League of History Organizations. I want to welcome you all to today's colleague circle. We're going to be digging into the details of the new Connecticut Cultural Fund operating support grants. With us today, we have Jason Mancini, Executive Director at Connecticut Humanities, Liz Shapiro, who is Director of Arts, Preservation, and Museums in the state's Department of Economic and Community Development, Scott Wands, who is Manager of Grants and Programs at Connecticut Humanities, and Lian Partridge, who's the Grants and Programs Assistant at Connecticut Humanities. They have some information prepared, but we want to devote a lot of time to fielding any questions or clarifications that you have about this new program. So I'm going to kick things over to Jason to just welcome you all and say a few words. And our presenters will all sort of take it from there. If you have any questions as we go, please feel free to use the chat to pop them in there. And then we can do a more interactive Q&A after everyone has finished sharing the information about the grants. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know. And thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to see the interest and enthusiasm for this new fund. Jason?
Thanks, Amherst. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you. We are so excited about this funding, these new opportunities for our entire sector in Connecticut to really strengthen and support all of this. So thrilled to be able to be here. Scott and Lian, of course, and Liz will be answering questions and providing some of the key information. We're so interested in understanding all of your needs and providing the essential and critical support during this time, both now and as we look into the future. And just to give you a sense of the shape of not just the immediate need, but we are really looking at a longer term view as we move towards America 250 in 2026 and beyond. So that's really central to our thinking and building our cultural and knowledge economy in Connecticut. We're excited to be able to do this. We want to continue doing it, and we'll of course be looking for your continued support and engagement with our legislators and your respective publics. So really happy to do this and thrilled to be partnering with the Office of the Arts and Liz and her team. And I'll turn it over to her for comment. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. So hi, everybody. I'm Liz Shapiro. I'm the Director of the Office of the Arts and the State Historic Preservation Office. And I also have 4 museums that operate within the State Historic Preservation Office. I think just Scott and Lian are really going to be the stars of the show today, but what I want to make sure that everybody who's here knows, I know that this is primarily a museum and or historical society audience who's here. And I want you to know that these funds are for you. They are for you, and they are also for arts organizations. And this is a new thing in Connecticut. And this is something that Jason and I have been working on. We've been partnering on initiatives for really since right before COVID started. We've been working together before that. Both of us came into our jobs believing that there was this incredibly weird, strange, alternative universe dichotomy between the arts and the humanities. They're in Connecticut, they're kept very separately. We know that there's a National Endowment for the Arts and a National Endowment for the Humanities. That does not help, but neither exists without the other. And so as we continue to work together to advocate on your behalf and to work with all of you to advocate on your own behalves, which is really the most important thing, we just want to assure you that, that if you are worried that this isn't for you, it is for you. And it's for you and a whole lot more folks. So I'm going to end with that. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Scott at Connecticut Humanities. And for those of you who knew the Liz and Scott show from way back when, I always think this is like the Liz and Scott show 2.0. So really happy that you're here today, and take it away, Scott.
Thanks, Liz and Jason, and really thanks to Amherst and to the Connecticut League for continuing to host these information sessions and let us all have opportunities to speak with you. The colleague circles are very much appreciated by us at Connecticut Humanities, especially with all these new opportunities to give us an opportunity to tell you what's going on and to make sure that you all have all your questions answered. But to start off with the one thing that Liz said, this funding is for you. If you are a historical society, you are a museum, I'm looking around here, Cam, Bruce, Joanne, this is for you and your organizations. This is not something that is about how bad COVID hit you. Our organization has made it through okay. What we're trying to do right now is get funding to all of the different cultural organizations in our sector, museums, historical societies, and the arts organizations, and there's a whole variety of things that flow under that. Historic houses, historic sites. This will help us know exactly how big our state's cultural sector is, how many institutions we have, how many employees we help support, how many contractors our industry helps us support, how many volunteer hours we all contribute and bring in. And these are the kind of information that will help us go back to the legislature to talk about who we are, what our sector needs, what the impact that we have, and that's going to be something we'll talk more about over the course of our time today, to be able to hopefully continue to advocate on behalf of the legislature. And I do encourage you all now, and after you receive funds, to reach out to your state house rep, to your state senator, to thank them for making this unprecedented funding available, and to talk about how it's going to help transform your organization, the community. This is what we need to start getting across, and to track how we're growing and advancing as a field with the use of this money. And we're talking big bucks here. This is $30.7 million over the course of the next biennium, 20 million of which hits this fiscal year, 80% of which is going out in operating support. And I'm not a math major, but $16 million is a pretty easy number to come at, and it's a huge number. It's the rest of the money I was expecting to grant out with our normal state funding over the rest of my 20-year plus career, all happening between now and Christmas. But if you do not apply, if you do not tell your other town museums and historical societies and neighboring town museums and historical societies to apply, we cannot get you money. The minimum award anyone's getting that is an eligible institution, again, looking around, Beth, Claire, Lori Ann, you all are the eligible institutions. You will get this funding. The minimum amount is $5,000, and we're going to right size awards based on a couple other factors, including how big your operating budget is. But this is not one of those things where we're trying to figure out who was hurt the most by COVID, and you guys were doing okay, so you don't need to come in. If you don't come in, we don't have as good a count, we don't have as good a data, you're ending up making us worse. So apply, get the money, figure out something to do that's good with it, and that is actually helping us in this case. I want to take you through, and Lian's going to be here primarily answering questions in the chat as they come up, and try to answer them as quickly as she can. I want to take you through our website. I want to take you through the guidelines, and I want to take you through the application. And I know this is going to answer a lot of the questions that you may have, and then we'll jump into more specific questions after that on a one-on-one basis and things that will come up in the chat. But let me start by sharing my screen here, and I'm going to go to the website. I want to go, no, that is not the right window. Let's stop that. Let's try again, take two. Here we go. This is the right window. All right, so all the information, the one place to go, the only website you need to remember is cthumanities.org. If you go to cthumanities.org, under our work is where all the grants information lives. And if you go over to the far right, all the grants and programs information is there. You can click on CT Cultural Fund Operating Support Grants, and you'll end up at the landing page for our information. And this will explain what this funding is, where it came from, again, who it's for. This language here and in the guidelines and in the application is not for us to find some way to exclude your museum, your historical society, your historic site. It's because we know when we open up these sources of funding, there are many other organizations that are not like you that are trying to find a way in. And we're trying to not have the social service organizations, the for-profits, the types of places that this funding is not, make it down a rabbit hole that they're going to be not funded from. So a lot of this language about eligibility, where we ask for who you are from your bylaws, what your mission statement is, this is not a trick for us to exclude you. It's really to start working with some of even the other organizations we work with. There could be an organization that does great work for food justice and food security and running a food bank in the community. And they do a lecture series once a year on issues related to food in the humanities that we fund because that's a project grant. But this is not a project grant. This is about who you are and what you do. And that's where the 51% of your activities comes into play. But you all, again, if you are a historical society, that 51%, everything that you do is about arts, culture, and the humanities. We talked about the maximum award amounts and that everyone that is eligible will get an award. The one thing you need to do is make sure you submit by November 15th at 11:59 p.m. We're like Cinderella, if the clock hits midnight, I can't help you. You could submit tomorrow, you could submit at 11:55 p.m. on the 15th, just don't let the clock turn to the 16th. You will need to use our online grants portal. We'll talk about that again here. If you don't know if your organization has a profile in our system, if you don't know how to log in, if you don't have the right people associated with your account and you need to change users, these are all the kind of things that Lian can help you with and get you access and get the right people access. On the left side, we've got quick links to our guidelines and a preview of the application. You can quickly look at what it is before you go even farther. You don't have to set up your profile in the system. You can preview the application right here, print it out, and start working on some of your responses offline if you want, and then cut and paste into our system later. And we have at the bottom of the page, frequently asked questions, which are answering a lot of the questions that we're getting from a number of organizations, as well as more information sessions coming up. This, I think, is about the halfway mark. We have a few more this week, next week, and the week after. And you can click there to see them all. I've seen some of you at least 2, if not 3 of our information sets. I feel like we've got groupies at this point in time. So I'm glad you like and continue to hear my voice here. It makes me feel happy. Let's move on to the guidelines here. So if you click guidelines, it'll open up another window where you will see our guidelines. I'm not going to repeat the stuff we've already talked about. Again, there's a lot of information we've already talked about on eligibility to try to make sure we're not getting a lot of those social service and for-profits coming through. There is one thing I want to highlight here. It highlights here and a couple other places why we received this funding, what some of our priorities are. So while this is general operating support, and you can use this for any of the things that's not listed as funding exclusions later on in the guidelines, we're hoping that this is going to help people, help organizations do a few things. Number one, restaff up here if you've lost staff because of the pandemic, reduce people's hours, bring those people back, employ more people. We want to help with the education gap that's developed because of the pandemic and be connecting our content and materials to K through 12 teachers and educators, and improve technology and digital infrastructure, the way you serve your public, bringing it today to bring it online and get it into people's homes digitally. As well as wanting to make sure that the work that we do and the audiences we serve are as diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible as possible. So those are the kinds of priorities. And if your use of funding helps to align in those ways, it will help us with our advocacy and impact back to the legislature and the governor. And it will set you up in a good stead for year 2 when the rules are going to change for how we fund. Obviously, we've got less than half of the money for year 2 than we have for year 1. And we are very likely to be prioritizing funding for the organizations that have made progress in some of these key areas that we've articulated throughout this process. Funding amounts we've talked about, we have 16 million, minimum award is 5,000. The one thing I will say here is if your organization receives line item funding in the state budget, that means you are listed among all the different line items, just like Connecticut Humanities is with an award, or you're part of a consortium like the Connecticut Art Museums. You need to identify that amount of funding in your application in the budget section, and award amounts may be adjusted based on the amount of state funding you've already received as a line item in the budget. This is to right size awards and make sure that this operating support is not duplicative and not taking into consideration other funding that some organizations have received and others haven't. This does not take into any consideration any other grant money you've received from us at Connecticut Humanities, any other funding you received from the Connecticut Office of the Arts, any federal or state agency awards from NEH, IMLS, National Park Service, SVOG, small business loans. None of those get taken into consideration as we right size your awards. Who is eligible? We've tried to broaden as much as we're able to and with the funding allows to not only 501c3s that do this work, but municipal run organizations. We know some towns run museums and those are eligible. Even Connecticut, Connecticut-based tribes, one of the 5 Connecticut recognized tribes and their cultural entities, or Connecticut state operated museums like Gillette Castle or Prudence Crandall, or Connecticut state or college university operated museums like the Gales. We want everyone that does this work to be here to get their data, to give them at least some minimal funding. For-profits, individuals, those are not allowed. And I want to highlight individuals. We know there are wonderful and important artists, scholars, knowledge keepers that all work with us. While you are not eligible to come in directly for funding, we very much anticipate and encourage organizations that receive this money to help employ you and to have you do the humanities, arts, cultural activities through exhibitions, programs, and other activities like that. Won't belabor the eligible expenses. Want to just highlight some of the ineligible ones coming up here rather. But again, any of these kind of things that's related to the general operation of your organization will by and large be allowable. There is no match. No one-to-one match, no external cash. This is a straight up award. Everyone that comes in will be given 12 months project period from January 1 of 22 to December 31 of 22. Because this funding was approved by the legislature for this fiscal year, you also could be applying funds retroactively to the beginning of our fiscal year of July 1, 21. The exclusions here, there's the usual. You can't be using food and alcohol and having parties. You can't be advocating for social or political action or lobbying. I think the most important things is you can't be buying capital equipment, buildings, or land, buying new artifacts, artwork, or collections items, or renovating, restoring, rehabbing, or doing construction on your historic sites. Those are probably the ones that some of you might want to apply it to that is not allowed here based on this funding.
Can I jump in there, Scott, and just say that while that is true, what you can do is take these funds, at whatever you receive from this grant pool, and apply it to your general operating budget and take the equal amount that you were going to spend in your general operating amount for costs that have to do with historic building preservation or whatever else you need, and use your own money for those purposes, right? So just like it's a silly thing, but sometimes we don't get the full extent of what this award could create, what openings this award could create for you.
Exactly. So you're going to pay your staff person $10,000 this year out of your money. You get a $10,000 award. You pay that staff person with our $10,000. That frees up $10,000 from your budget to go somewhere else. And that could go to some of these things that aren't allowed. But just don't, at the end of the day, directly link the accounting to these things with our funds. And as always, at the end, you can't pay our board members with these funds directly. You can't pay your own board members. You can't pay elected candidates or declared candidates with this funding. At the end, there's the how to apply, which will link to our grants application portal. And we'll go there next. The one thing I want to say is if you click this link or this link or the similar links on the previous page we were on, it will take you straight to the application in question and a blank application that you can start filling out. You do not need to fill your application out in one sitting. You can save it, leave, come back. The system will update and save it every 5 minutes. There's a manual save button at the bottom. However, if you come back and you click the same link, it will take you to another blank, brand new application. If you've already started one and saved one, don't get frustrated. Don't start all over again. When you go to your applicant dashboard here and you're in the middle of a new application, click the home button at the top it will take you to a different view. This is my applicant dashboard. It'll take you back to your main page, and you can see the applications in progress, and you can click edit, a blue edit button there to work on the existing application. So this is to try to not have you get frustrated and start 3 or 4 versions of the same application. Just know every time you click one of these links, we've cut some of the steps out to get you where you need to go the first time, but that will take you to a new one every subsequent time. I'll walk you through the application itself. Again, a lot of the same information. We're trying as many ways as possible not to have places go far down a road that they will not be eligible for funding. And a lot of the first questions are yes, no's to further get them there. But again, looking at the people on the call, you are culture and humanities organizations. Your mission and core activities are in these things. You do need to click here what your type of organization is, whether a 501c3 is the vast majority of you are, or you're town-owned or such. And that will open up a few specific questions that you'll have to answer with more information about your type of organization. Financial statements. Do you have numbers that you can submit for the last few years? If you're a brand new organization, you don't have 2018 data because you didn't start till 2019. Don't worry, don't freak out. Just put zeros in for that and upload a document that says our organization was incorporated on June 30th of 2019, so we don't have 2018 data. And we can help you with that if you've got any questions. These are the eligibility questions that will pop up for 501c3 or municipality or state-operated museum. If you click other organization, we want you to describe, but we also want you to reach out to Lian. Again, this is to make sure that you're not going too far down a road that you're not going to be eligible and can't receive the funding. The next section here is some core organization information. And I'm actually going to pull up an image of an application here just to show you what that looks like. Because this is a cool thing. And you can pull the answers to a few questions from GuideStar. So you do not need to fill out and search for some stuff if you don't know what it is. So when you get to that section about organization information, the very top here, you'll see primary organization name with a little blue square with a sunburst in it. If you click on that, it will pull your primary organization name from GuideStar or your employer identification, your EIN number. So if you don't remember what those are, instead of searching for them, let GuideStar pull it for you and it will help you out there. Organization type. We're not only trying to figure out how many cultural organizations there are, we want to figure out how many describe themselves as historical societies versus theater companies and all the other things on this list. So you may very well be in an organization like Florence Griswold, where you are an art museum, you are an exhibit space, you are a historic site. Click all of the different types of things that you describe yourself as. If you are other, click that and just let us know what that other is. Here's where we do ask, the legal purpose from your articles of incorporation and bylaws, mission statement. Again, just cut and paste. Hopefully this is not stuff that you have to search hard for. And this is not stuff to scare you away as much as to keep making sure we're getting the right types of organizations in. We do want to know how your programs and activities help support that mission. And by that, I mean, you do changing exhibits every year. You run lecture series. You run walking tours of your community. Just let us know what some of those types of activities that you do are. Next, again, this is general operating, and we're not going to hold you to this. You're not submitting an application to come up with your plan and justify your plan for what you want to do, but let us know how you're thinking you're going to spend it today, whether that be bringing back staff, or you want to improve your IT presence, or you want to run some diversity, equity, and access training for your staff and board, or you're in survival mode and you're just trying to make it through tomorrow. We want to know this, and this is going to help us figure out what the biggest needs are of the sector overall. And then there is a block where you can explain a little bit more about it. We do want you to think big. We see this funding, we hope you do too, as being transformational on the state level, but also for your organization. And we'd love you to share your vision of how you envision this funding transforming you over the course of the next year. But also, besides more money, what other things would you need to help you realize this transformational change? It could be workshops or programs. It could be volunteers. It could be interns. You know, we're not giving you a list here. We really want to hear what your needs are and other things you would be looking for. And in partnership with groups like Amherst, if we have a real big need that we're seeing here, we're going to find ways to meet it if it's programmatic, or if it's something that we can spend funds on and do group work of supporting between Connecticut Humanities and the Office Arts. We might find ways of helping to secure that funding on a different level other than an application. One person did put world peace here. I cannot promise that, but you know, again, we all are supportive of world peace, but I cannot help you obtain world peace through this funding. We want to know your physical address. This will help us put a pin on the map of where your organization is. We know this is tough. Some organizations just have a PO box. Let us know the community in which your PO box lives. It also helps us match you up to the legislators that support that area. We want to know your mailing address too. Again, these are not trick questions. We send out hard copies of checks. If we do not have the right mailing address here, we will send the check to the wrong place. And this will not mean that you won't get funding. It'll just delay you getting funding at the end of the day. So let us know where you want your check to go when we get those awards. We want your website. We want your Facebook and Twitter handles. This is going to help us over the course of the next year promote you and talk about you. My colleague Amy does great work, and for those of you that participated in Kids Free saw that we were sharing information and highlighting our different participant organizations over the course of that program. We'll continue to do that, but we need to know how to tag you on the right social media platforms. We do have one thing here that I really ask you to do for me here. We have changed our organization profile information and added some new fields. So at the very top of an application, there would be a little pencil icon like this that says, you know, update my organization's profile information. And we have new fields for your contact information and legislative districts. Fill that out, help us fill out those data fields. Just two more blocks of stuff, and this is helping us right size the awards budget information. We want to know when your year starts and when it ends. If your calendar year, great, Jan 1 to December 31. You're on the state's fiscal year like Connecticut Humanities, great, July 1 to June 30. And for everything that follows, whatever current year you're in is your current year, whatever the previous year is your previous year. So if you're on calendar year, your year is ending 12/31 of 21. This is your current year. Your next year starts January 1. You don't have to be trying to forecast out beyond whatever your next year is on whatever cycle you're on. And then we're going to ask for you to upload a copy of your current budget and those previous budgets. Also pull out two numbers, the total amount of expenses that you have and the total amount of income you have. These are going to quickly help us right size awards to organizational size. This is also where if you do receive line item funding, and again, if you don't know if you receive line item funding, the answer is most likely no. If you receive operating support in your NARTS organization from Liz as part of her funding, this is not that either, but enter that here. And that is really the whole section here for a few different years. And we're asking going back to 3 years ago, because if your organization has gotten smaller because of the pandemic, we don't want to right size your award to who you are now. We want to try to get you back to where you were. There is an additional information block here you don't need to use, but if there's anything else you want to help explain about any of that, this is your opportunity to do so. And then we've got similar questions about staffing. When we ask for full-time staff and part-time staff and contractors, these are paid individuals, people that you're paying, not your volunteers. If you've got volunteers that are serving in staff roles but uncompensated, count their hours in the volunteer hours contributed field here. And we're trying to figure out what the size of our sector is and where it was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. After that, it's just the stuff we need to be able to make contracts. I'm required, our system needs to have a project title. You can simply put Deep River Historical Society Cultural Fund Operating Support Grant. You don't need to get something creative here. We just need something that fills this field. Authorizing Signatory. When you get your grant contract, whose name do you want to have on it? That will be the person who will be looking to sign it. Project Director. Who is the person you want us to reach out to by phone and email anytime we've got a question about this grant? It's the first person we reach out to. Fiscal Agent. Who is the person that is helping manage the coming and going of grant funds and signing off on receipt and expenditure of funds? As a check and balance, the project director and the fiscal agent cannot be the same person. They need to be two different people. Your fiscal agent could be your treasurer. It could be your finance person. It can be the bookkeeper that helps you manage your books. But it's got to be a different person, the project director, to make sure that two different people are signing off on the coming and going of these state funds. After that, we don't ask for hard signatures. We've got a certification block that you would just check the box to say that you certify and have read all the information that we're doing here. And then finally, a grant e-newsletter opt-in, where you can click a box and we will add you to our grants e-newsletter. I encourage you all to do this if you're not already getting it. We're not going to spam you. You will get information about this grant otherwise, but not about other grant opportunities. And we have many exciting ones that are coming that we hope that you'll want to take advantage of beyond this grant line. And with that, I've said way too much, so I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to ask you all for questions, and Amaris, if there are some that have come up here that you want to raise, or if people want to raise their hands, we can start to call on you individually. And I know Lian's been typing away hard in the background here and trying to answer all your questions as they're coming in.
Sure, great. I just want to highlight a couple of things. I mean, you were talking, I know we mostly have kind of a history crowd here, but it's my understanding, and I just want to, hear this out of the horse's mouth. Not that you look like a horse or anything, but that this is,
Today.
I know you got a haircut. This is funding this real, and if you're a museum in Connecticut, you are eligible for this funding, right? You don't have to be a history museum.
Children's museum, zoo, aquarium, nature center, political
air
science
museum, railroad museum,
train
industrial museum, science museum,
all
museums. Great. I just wanted to clarify that because I think that we actually have a pretty diverse group here today.
The only museum that would have a problem is if you are a for-profit museum, and we have had a few. One of them is no longer, but I cannot help the for-profit museums. But if you are anything other, nonprofit, state, indigenous community, municipal, come in.
Great. And I know there have been a lot, I've been fielding some questions about this too, but, in terms of budgets, because people have different budget years and things like that. What you really want is the currently board approved operating budget for the organization. Is that correct?
If your year ends on October 15th for some strange feature, that's when it is, you are still in your current year.
Right.
Your last year was last year through October 15th. Your next year is the stuff that starts 2 days from now. So whatever cycle you're on, whatever year covers today is your current year, and then the future or the past accordingly.
Excellent. Do you want me to highlight some of the things that have come across in the chat so they're in the recording, or do you want to just start fielding questions?
Yeah, go for that. Call some of the stuff up in the chat. But again, if people want to raise their hands, let us know. We'll start calling on you individually.
Yeah,
as well.
that sounds good. Scott, let me make you a co-host so you can do that while I go through the chat here. There have been some questions about the definition of contractor and what that really means. I mean, I always take this as someone who's not, who's not on your, not a W-2 employee, basically somebody who's not staff or salaried.
Not staff, but I mean, don't go crazy here. If your sink starts to drip and you call a plumber in once to come and fix the leaky sink, this is not quite what we're looking at. We're looking at, you're always hiring a grant writer on contracts to fill out the next grant application. You don't have a paid curator, but you contract with one for every new exhibit you do, or an exhibit designer or a graphic layout person. Those kind of functions that, whether they're for, this project or a longer term, when we deal with orchestras, maybe all of the different musicians are contract employees. Even if they perform with them throughout the year, every new production is another contract that they're on for the oboist. Those are the kind of people we would like to be tracking here.
Yeah, great. Have you talked a bit about the requirements for the final report? I understand you'll be asking, as usual, for a final report from people.
So we tried to right size this application to be as, easy and as non-scary as possible, and to only be looking for the information that we need here. When we get to the point of making awards, and all of these award calls will be happening before Christmas. We're going to be, Lian and I are like Santa Claus this year, and all the calls will happen before Christmas. At that point, we're going to switch over to going under contract, and there will be a contract that you'll have to execute, but there will also be a survey instrument that we're going to deploy that's not for you to send to all the people that are your members and your program goers, but it's for you and your organization to fill out on behalf of your organization. And there will be some data collection that we're going to look for there about our sector, where it is at this moment in time, so that we can start to gauge how it changes in the future. I can't tell you what all those questions are yet, because we have not created all those questions yet. We're going to work with Susie Wilkening of Reach, formerly of Reach Advisors. She worked with us in Connecticut on the cultural consumer study, and I see a couple organizations here like Mystic Seaport that were part of that survey back with us in 2008. And she did great work and is a great way to capture the data of our field and explain what it means. She's been working now since then. We got her before she went big time. Now she's doing this stuff for the American Alliance Museums, the American Children's Museums, Aztec, and the science centers. And she's really helping to talk about the impact of our entire sector. And she's going to be doing this for Connecticut for us. And she's going to be helping us create graphic stories. She will help us create an instrument that we're going to, like I said, do a contract. We're going to do 3 more instruments with her and with our grantees at the end of year 1, at the beginning of year 2, and at the end of year 2, so we can start to see how the field moves. She's going to do some surveying besides that of the average Connecticut resident and what their views are of this sector, so we can see what the impressions are of our world now and how that changes over time. If there are key things that we want you to be recording over the life of this grant, we will let you know at the outset, or as close to as they're possible. If there are collections tools we need to create, we're going to either on our own or with Susie work to create those, to deploy them so that we're all having the same tools and experiences. If there's trainings that's needed, we'll work with the Office of the Arts and with Amherst and the Connecticut League and similar organizations to help run those trainings and give you the skills and confidence you need to be able to do this. But I'm excited because we're going to have some awesome data like we've never had before, which is going to really help us say who we are as a field and what we do and what we need. And there will be some information, probably things about demographics and the demographics of who we are and what we serve. We need to find out the right ways to ask these questions to really get us at what we're looking at and to not be overly burdensome and asking the wrong questions at the end of the day.
All right, don't talk anymore, Scott. It was too long.
Too long. I love it.
What we're trying to say here is, for those of you who have been working in the sector for a long time, we have not been collecting good data. This grant is going to allow us to collect data that is the same for what legislators refer to as the cultural sector or the arts and culture sector. They rarely talk about humanities as a sector. They will sometimes talk about museums, but they don't use the same language as we do. So we decided we better use their language. So this is going to allow us to collect the kind of data where we can now speak to our legislators in a way that they can understand. And that is going to inform all of the actions that all of the work that we do moving forward, all of the asks that we're asking for, and will really enable us to explain what this sector looks like as a whole. So there was a most recent question here. Liz, are you saying that the funds must be spent on one or more of the 3 priorities you identified in your application, even if your priorities change? So I'm saying that as a yes and no, right? Understanding that priorities change, and sometimes that is going to have to happen. I think, and we haven't really talked about this much, the idea is right now, if you at this point in time identify 3 priorities, you don't know how much money you're going to get, which I know is really hard, but they're priorities for your institution. You're going to know by Christmas, right? How much money you get and what that award is. I would say that unless like an act of God kind of happens, and we know in this world acts of God seem to happen, that your priorities are priorities because you have been looking at these and you're thoughtful about them, right? So it's unlikely that all 3 of your priorities will have changed by December. So I'm saying that there's totally wiggle room in this, but we would really like to align. One of the things that our sector hasn't always been so good at doing is identifying priorities and then spending money to make sure that those priorities are met, right? Because stuff comes up. So what we're trying to do is to hold a little bit of accountability so that you can identify your own priorities. We're not telling you what those are. You identify them. And then here's some money, and maybe spend your money on those priorities. And if you've looked at the application, Scott went through it, but if you've looked at it deeply, I believe one of the priorities is like keeping the doors open. So like the priorities are really like very broad. So I don't think anybody will have a problem with that.
Great, thank you, Liz and Scott. I mean, I think a lot of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat really have to relate to the specifics of, can we spend the money this way or that way? Stephanie asked, can we use this funding to expand our exhibits, adding digital technologies? Yes.
Yes.
Can we use this money for more than one thing? Yes,
Yes.
you can. Can it be used for non-artifact and non-capital based exhibits available to the public? Absolutely.
Yes.
The idea here, I think, what I might underline here is if it's not explicitly excluded in the funding restrictions, you can use the money for it, right?
Yeah, and I mean,
that's why those funding restrictions are there.
Be thoughtful and be creative. I mean, if you really want to use this for exhibits, and there were some ways that you wanted to update your exhibit space, so you've got a hanging system to use not just for this exhibit, but every exhibit you're going to use going forward. Oh my God, this award has just changed all your exhibits for the future. If you've needed a new exhibit case because you don't have the right way to display your object safely, and you haven't had the funds to do it for years, this is your opportunity to get yourself the ways to display more of your collection and put it on view safely. So you can
that time I didn't mean to interrupt you, Scott. I'm sorry. One of the things that I would say though, and talking about what final reports and what things you should be keeping track of, and this is something that for those of you who participated in the Summer at the Museums program, I think it's becoming increasingly more important to, especially to our legislators, to have some idea of who's coming in your door. So understanding that sometimes seems like an insurmountable barrier, especially when you're a one-person or all volunteer organization, thinking about how you could institute a way of capturing that information, I think is going to become more and more important. I don't think that is going to be anything that your next year's application will be judged on, but because there's some funding coming out the door, there's more complicated ways to manage visitation, and there's easier ways to do visitor counts, and that might be something that I would just keep in mind. Again, not does it make you eligible or ineligible for this funding, but I think it's going to become like a kind of a big deal moving forward.
Great. And that, I would say that maybe we can do a session sometime in the next few months on ways of capturing visitation. That sounds like, I think there are a lot of different ways that we can do that. So let's make a plan to do a colleague circle on that.
Yeah, I want to work on this going forward with you, Amaris. And if we don't come up with the way we're going to capture this stuff with Susie, we want to figure out how to help you all do this stuff. I see Terry's got her hand up.
Yep.
Hi there. Okay, 3 quick questions. Liz, did you just say that there's going to be another round of funding next year? What did you just say?
Oh, yeah. So Scott started off with that. So there's going to be $16 million going out the door in general operating this year. And then next year we have a total pool of 10.7 million. So automatically about half of we have a total pool. So we have no idea what things are going to look like for next year. A lot of it is going to depend on what the state of the nation is and what the state of Connecticut is, how we're affected by the pandemic next year. But there is a very strong possibility that the grants will be more competitively awarded next year.
Okay, that's what I thought I heard in the last one, but I wanted to make sure that hadn't changed, or the thought hadn't changed. This is kind of evolving as I think you're going along a little bit. Another quick question on this is that I'm so used to in grants supplying a budget for what I want to do. We don't have to submit a budget, right? I mean, or are our costs that we're expecting? You guys are going to read it and determine how much to give us? Is that what you're saying?
Right. This is not about your project. It's about your organization size. So we're going to be taking your budget numbers that you submitted and coming up with an equation. And roughly it's going to be a percentage of your average operating expenses over the last few years. We have to figure out what organizations are getting the $5,000 awards, even if it's a really large percentage of the organization. How many are so big that they're capped off at the 500,000? Take out the things that are ineligible because they already got some operating support, and then what percentage is left to give an average award to everybody of the same equal amount. It could be 4.2563. It could be 5.12. I don't know what it's going to be, and that's why I don't have to worry about this. We work with the state economists. We're going to give them the data, and they're going to help us to figure out what pool is left and what an equal percentage is of operating budgets to give to everybody.
So even if we write something that we think might cost 50,000, you may only give us 10 based on what our operating is. So we shouldn't write this expecting that we're going to get coverage for everything we want. Okay.
You should be indicating, up to the 1, 2, or 3 things you would hope to be expending this money on right now. Again, not knowing what size your award is. And then, based on your award, obviously those things could change, or you might have to pay her back, or you might have a whole heck of a lot more money than you were anticipating and you can do more.
So that 2,500 character limit, which is about 500 words, is kind of like just one large paragraph. And it's got to be articulated so well so we get the point across as to what we want to do and what our needs are, correct?
But again, you're not being evaluated on that plan there. We're just getting an idea of where you're thinking of going right now, so we can know individually and collectively as a field where places are hoping to go with these funds.
All right, and then one last quick question. Do we have to provide you with how 51% of or more of our budget is spent on cultural? Okay, you're going to figure that out.
I will look at Avon Historical Society. I know who Avon Historical Society is. I know what you do. I'm not going to look further. You're just going on. But I'm going to get an organization I've never heard of before.
Okay.
And I have to figure out what
you guys, just like, again, when you're thinking about, am I eligible? Because I spend 51% of my budget if your mission, let's just say, is to interpret the history of your town, then every single dollar that you spent is mission aligned. So you spent 100% of your funds on doing your mission, because there's not an employee who doesn't do your mission, right? Like, that doesn't make sense. So I didn't want to confuse things. I think you can understand if you're not a museum or a historical society or an arts organization. If you are feeding the hungry, for example, you might sometimes have like feed the hungry and make an art project. But that organization, even though it is doing the arts, is not spending 51% of its budget. It is not an arts organization. Its mission is to feed the hungry. So maybe that will help clarify it.
Yep, thank you.
See, Stephanie's hand is up.
Yep. Go ahead, Stephanie, unmute yourself.
Sorry, I thought I did. Oops. So it says under exclusions, renovation, restoration, rehabilitation, or construction of historic sites. So can we build new exhibits? Can we can use the money to build Tuskegee Airmen?
Correct. You can do exhibit fabrication and changes to your gallery spaces to facilitate the new exhibit. You just can't put on a new roof or paint the building.
Okay, and we cannot purchase a new hangar.
Correct.
Okay.
But as Liz said, if you were going to be paying something else with your own funds, you could be shifting the burden so that we're now paying the staff salary or the contractor, which is allowed, which then frees up that money to do the purchase of the things we can't fund.
Okay. And then I think you just answered my last question also. Capital improvements to the site. I was thinking of changing the lighting in the hangars. The same thing. We would just use our own money and then just replace it.
Yeah.
Right, because that would not be allowed, correct?
Correct. I wouldn't go into major physical systems of heating, electrical, lighting changes. That's not really what the intent of this is. And it starts to get us into murky areas that I don't think we need to go.
Okay, yeah, because it's exhibit lighting, but our exhibits are different. They're aircraft. They're huge.
I mean, we can get down to that if there's really a need at that point, but I'd say like if you could find something else that's not in a gray area, avoid
Okay.
the gray areas until we have to.
Great, thank you.
Marjorie?
Great. Yeah. Go ahead, Marjorie.
Hello. So we started working on the application and we came upon the part where you have the narrative piece, the organizational goals and priorities explained. And the third question there, the first one is about the goals, the next one's about transformation. The last one, additional needs. Are we talking about purchased items that we would need to make this happen, or what are we thinking about?
This is big picture here. We're giving you funds, which will hopefully transform your organization. I can't give you any more money than we can give you right now, but beyond money, is there things that your organization is really needing that you don't have? It could be, like I said, volunteers. You're having a real difficulty attracting the volunteers to do stuff right now. You need interns and you don't know how to get at interns. You know, like I said, someone put in world peace. I mean, we think big here. Like I can't get you world peace, but if we start knowing that, man, a bunch of organizations are struggling, they want to start to do more with racial equity, and they don't know how to begin with trying to be more equitable organizations and need help in that area. Maybe it's something that we work with the Connecticut League on, doing some trainings over the next year. If there's enough of an answer for something. If there's nothing that you can think of, you can leave that space blank. But again, beyond money, if there's something you're thinking of, let us know.
Okay, thank you.
And someone put in there the need for collections management space. So that could be another one. If you say, man, we have exhausted all of our collections space and we need space just to store more collections that are appropriate and climate controlled. Again, I don't know if we're going to be able to do anything with that, but the more we know what some of the needs are out there collectively, the more we can help right size our response.
Remember, this is a big project about collecting information about the sector across the sector. So if we find out that 50% of organizations are saying that they need money they need collection space, then that's a serious issue that we can identify and make it a legislative priority. So there's something that we didn't know, but now we do know.
So this is an opportunity to share, and it's an opportunity to inform those of us who, want to serve this sector and who serve this sector to help you do your work better, right? Like this is information the League is interested in. It's information that CT Humanities is interested in. It's information that the Office of Arts Preservation and Museums is interested in. So, this is all to, we want to think about the long game with this as well. What can we do if we're working together as a cultural sector to really show and demonstrate the importance of what we do in our communities in the state of Connecticut, and therefore hopefully argue for a higher sustained level of funding for this sector in the years ahead. That this windfall is not just going to be a windfall that's one and done, that we want to do the work to make sure that we get more money in the future, hopefully, right? That's what we're trying to do.
So we've been mainly talking about, well, exclusively talking about the operating support grants. There was one question I saw in the chat asking about a different pot of money and a different funding line that we've talked a little about, which is our SHARP grants, our SHARP capacity grants. This is funded through the American Recovery Plan and the funds that the National Endowment for the Humanities have provided to all state humanities councils. That application is almost ready to go live. If it doesn't go live today, it will go live tomorrow. We've exhausted the hour here, so I'm not going to go into length, but know that we will work with Amherst and do another information session about that. These grants are also going to be due on November 15th. We're trying to right size all these awards and get them out for Christmas time. But these are going to be, as opposed to the operating support grants we're talking about today, the SHARP grants, we're calling SHARP capacity grants, are going to be project based, but that project could be anything from bringing back staff, and that's your project, to hire new staff, to bring in a consultant to do strategic planning, to doing some upgrades to your technology infrastructure. So we're looking at capacity writ large. But again, if not today, we're going to push the button tomorrow, and these will be going live, and we will help explain more and answer questions about those in the coming days.
Great. Christina, did you have a question? Did you have to leave?
Sorry, I lowered my hand because Scott had answered it. I was going to ask about paid internships, but I guess I do have a follow-up. So thank you so much for still calling on me. So talking about this gray area, one of the issues that we have here at the Barnes Museum that Liz was talking about is collections management and collection space. So if that gray area, should it still go in our 3 top priorities, even though, you know, it's been very clear that it's not something that's really eligible for this round of funding, but if it's like my main priority, should I still put it up there concerning?
If you're doing work with your collections and you're trying to get your collections going, as long as you're not like knocking out a wall and building on a new space, I mean, short of like major construction on your institution, the turning of spaces around, getting rooms ready to be there, even if you need like a dehumidifier or a sump pump or something because your collections back up with water every time we get a major flood, those kinds of things are allowable, but we can't just be knocking out windows and door frames.
Yeah, collections management, yes. Safe collections, collections space, and building projects, no.
Okay, super. So like a shelf, maybe. I'm just
You're
kidding.
good on a shelf. Yeah, if you need shelf, so shelving is like a perfect example. Yeah, if you need shelving, shelving is good.
Shelving. You could be using these funds to become a member of Connecticut Collections with the Connecticut League, as I give a plug to them, because you've always wanted to join Connecticut Collections, but you haven't had the resources to do so. Those kinds of things.
Thank you so much. Answered so many of our questions. Appreciate it.
Great, thanks. So we're at the 1 o'clock mark. You know, I don't know if Scott, you can hang around to answer any sort of like lingering questions. I'm going to stop the recording in just a second. And thank you all. Thank especially to Scott, to Jason, to Liz, and to Lian for being here, to Lian for fielding so many questions in the chat as we were going. That was really fabulous, and Liz as well. And I just want to say there was something that came across my desk earlier today that I just want to share with all of you. There is the Shoreline Arts Alliance in partnership with the Rossi Foundation has this program to provide disposable masks and gloves to historical sites and museums that need that, and arts organizations. So if you are in need of masks and gloves for your organization, I'm going to pop a link in the chat to a form that you can fill out to make a request for a free donation of those things.
And again, don't be shy. I mean, I saw the photos of Eric's office. He has wall-to-wall boxes of, you know, personal protection equipment right now, and he wants to get it to you all. That's why he has it. So let him know.
And that'll go out in a newsletter and an email as well. I just figured since I have you all here, you can check that out right now.
And I can hang around a little bit. I know we need to stop the recording, but I can answer questions. And as they pop up, email Lian. She's put her information in the chat. We'll get you an answer as soon as possible. But come in when you're ready and submit when you guys are ready. And we're looking forward to getting all this funds out to you. Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Amaris. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Lian. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you for pushing out all of this funding. And we're really excited to see where it can take our whole sector in the state. Thanks.